and we are happy to have Rick Carbajal, who is a longtime softball umpire in the Central Region. He's actually the Los Lunas group leader for their softball association. Rick has served as a clinician for us a number of times, and he's been a crucial part of our softball umpiring staff over the years, and we're certainly excited to have him present and volunteer his time to get this presentation ready. And I think it's something that will be a great topic and a great refresher, and I'm sure there's some new information thrown in there as well. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Rick.
Well, thank you, Dana. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. I realize it's a Tuesday night, and we'll try and get you out of here on time. We've got a lot to cover, and so we'll just get right into it. We're going to start with lineup management. And the first thing I wanted to tell you is that I know that there are many of you seasoned veteran officials that have been doing this for quite some time, and this may seem old hat to you. It may seem trite, and you're saying, okay, why are we doing this? I've been doing this for forever, it seems like, but not everybody is in that same position. And I realize that we probably have some new officials, some future vets with us. And I will be very, very honest with you. When I first started doing this 21 years ago, my very first game was behind the plate. And I was a plate umpire. And I literally had no idea. I wasn't taught, I wasn't shown anything, given any instruction on what to do with the lineups and how to keep track of subs that came in and courtesy runners and all of those other things, changes in pitchers and catchers and all of that. I had no idea, and I kind of winged it, and I got by. And I then realized after that very first game just how crucial it is to know how to keep your lineup straight and how to manage that. And it's a very important part. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be talking about lineup management. Again, what I'm about to show you, this is the system that I use, and it was taught. I actually went, when I realized I didn't know what I was doing, I went to someone that I trusted and I knew. In fact, I kind of adopted him as my mentor, and I asked him, I said, hey, show me how to keep track of the lineup. What do I do when subs come in? And then he asked me, he says, have you done it yet? And I said, yeah. And I told him what I did, and he said, well, it's a good thing you didn't get in trouble. And I said the same thing. And he took the time to literally show me what to do with the lineup. And it's very, very important that we know how to keep track of the lineup and keep the game moving and keep it flowing. So we're going to start off tonight by looking at our lineup, what we're going to be looking at. And we're going to be talking about why lineup management is important. Why is it important? And then we're also going to look at the lineup card itself. And then we're going to have some practical exercises just to kind of get you familiar with this. Again, if you've got a system that you use that is different from this, and it allows you to keep track of what's going on in the game, and you can go back throughout the entire game and track your history, that's great. Use that if it works for you. But not everybody has the same system. Not everybody. I'm not going to assume that everybody has a system. I didn't, and so this is why I feel it's important that we know what we're doing here. Okay, so why is it important that we know how to manage our lineup card? First of all, it records the players used in the game. So no matter who goes in, who comes out, who starts, and who never comes in, who's used as a courtesy runner, all of that, it'll be recorded if you have a good system to manage your lineup card. Secondly, it ensures that the use of all the players that come in and out of the game and are used throughout the game, that use is legal. And it prevents, obviously, if you're ensuring the use of players is legal, it's going to prevent illegal use of players. And here's probably the most important, one of the most important reasons for having a good lineup management system. It allows for accurate and clear tracking of what has happened throughout the entire game. And this is really, really important, particularly if you find yourself in the following situation. Let's say you have a game on Monday, and that game is going to determine who the district champion is, and they want to get this game played. They have to get this game played. You start off on Monday. It's an evening game. They're playing under the lights, and you're about maybe through the third inning. All of a sudden, there's a power failure, and you're not going to get that power back on. So they have to finish this game. Now we have a suspended game, obviously. So they reschedule, coaches get together, they reschedule a game, and they find out that they can complete this game on Saturday morning. Well, Saturday morning, you can't be there. You're the plate umpire, but you can't be there Saturday. You blocked yourself out. It's your anniversary. You've been married for 40 years and you want to see year 41. So you say, no, I can't do it. So now you have to have a good, accurate lineup system, because you're going to have to get together with whoever is taking your place behind the plate, and you're going to have to give them that lineup card. And from that lineup card, they have to know exactly what the situation was at the moment the game was suspended. How many outs were there? Who's on first base? Who's on third base? If anybody, who's been in the game, who's used up their re-entries, and all of that. Courtesy runners, everything has to be tracked on that card. And you have to be able to give that card to your replacement. They have to be able to look at it and say, yeah, I've got a clear picture of where we're going to be at come Saturday morning. So this is why you need to have a really accurate and a clear tracking of what's happened throughout the entire game. So first of all, let's look at the lineup card. You can see on this lineup card, this is pretty much what they look like. It should have the home team, it should have the visiting team on there, the date should be on there. And now the book says it's preferred that the coach's name be included on that lineup card. So take a look at that. When they hand you the lineup cards at your pregame conference and you're standing at the plate, take a look at both and make sure that all that information is on there. You want to make sure that all the names are listed, and the book says that there has to be a minimum of a first initial and the last name. Also, all the positions have to be indicated on there, as well as all the uniform numbers for the players. And when you're going through it, just double check those uniform numbers and make sure you don't have any duplicates. It happens. Often you'll have a varsity game and the JV player is called up, and the varsity player and the JV player may have the exact same number. So you want to catch that at your pregame conference and have the coach correct it before you accept that lineup as official. So on the left, you can see starting players. They got them listed there, 1 through 10. They're playing with a DP and they're playing with a flex. And then you have down at the bottom, you have your subs. Now it's important to, when you get your lineup card, a lot of times your coaches, particularly early in the season, first couple of games in the season, you may be handed a lineup card and all the substitutes are listed right in this area right here. I don't know if you can see that, but they're listed right in there. That makes it real difficult to mark any changes that occurred during the game. So normally what you want to do is you want to tell your coach, if you can work with it, fine. If you can work around that, and I normally do, but what I will tell the coach at pregame is I'll say, hey, coach, would you mind for your next game, do your next umpire a favor and not put them in the substitution column. Just skip a line and list all your subs down at the bottom. That'll make it a lot easier for you as an umpire when that happens. If you can't work around it, or if it's too confusing to see that, you can just not accept the lineup and tell them, coach, I need you to redo your lineup, put all your subs down on the bottom there if you don't mind. And I've yet to have to do that, but I will see it like that, and I'll just ask them for the next game to please put the subs down at the bottom so that you have room to write on that substitution area when changes take place. Now you can see here that once a player is listed in any of the first 10 slots, that's the only place that that player can reside. I usually like to, when I teach this, I usually like to use the analogy that the first 9 or 10 slots are single dwelling apartments. You can only have one person living in that apartment at any given time. The player lives in that slot, and it's where she enters and leaves the game. Okay, it's the only slot of sub where a player can enter the game at. So they can come in, a sub who has yet to be in the game can go in any one of those first 9 or 10 slots. Now the lineup slots, the first 9 or 10 slots, they can't be switched, they can't be juggled, they can't be changed, they cannot do anything with them. Once a person is listed in that slot, that's where that person is going to reside. That's that person's dwelling place. So you can't take someone that's in spot number 2 and move them down to spot number 7. Once they're listed and that lineup has been accepted as official, that's where they will stay throughout the entire game. If a player is not actively listed in any of those first 10 slots, then she's not in the game. Any player can play any defensive position at any time. So there's no restriction on the pitcher. Okay, so you can move defensive slots all you want to. They can be shuffled. You can move a left fielder over to shortstop. You can move a second baseman over to catcher. You can move the catcher out to the center field, wherever they want, but they will stay in the same batting order, regardless of their position out on the field. Okay, the exception is that they can return once an inning. They can, those positions, defensive positions, they can be juggled, they can be changed, they can be switched all game long. I'm gonna skip through this one because I want to get to the part here. Lineup card, who is on it? Starters, they're, like I said, they're in the first 9 or 10 players, in the first 9 or 10 slots. 9 if they're playing with a straight 9, 10 if they're playing with a DP flex. They've entered the game once. Okay, but if they're taken out of the game, they still have a re-entry right, and they can come back into the game one time only. Okay, they're locked in whatever slot they're put in by the coach. That's the slot that they're locked in. Can't be changed. They can't be moved around to any other position within the lineup. Okay, when another player enters that slot, remember it's a single dwelling apartment. So if one player enters into that slot, that starter has to come out. The substitutes, on the other hand, they are the players who are not listed in a starting lineup slot. They can enter the game the first time for any player in any slot. So if they haven't been in the game, they can go in any slot that they want to, that the coach wants them to, actually. And when a sub enters the game, it's going to force the starter out of the game. They can re-enter the game again if they're removed, if they re-enter the starter, for example. They can re-enter a game, but it's got to go, that sub has to go into the slot they were in the first time. So in other words, you can't take a sub, put them in slot 4, and then bring a starting player back in, and then bring that same sub back in and put them in the 9th slot. You can't do that. They have to go back into the first slot that they went in the first time. They become the player that they go in for. For example, if you have a sub and you put them in for the DP, they become the DP. If they go in for the flex, they become the flex. Okay, they can be replaced by the starter that she went in for, if she has a re-entry right, or they can be replaced by another sub who has not been in the game yet. Okay, so the starter and their sub can never be in this game at the same time, ever. They can play any defensive position again that they want to. Remember, the defensive positions can be juggled, they can be switched, and they can be changed. Okay, as we said before, starters live in the first 9 or 10 slots in the lineup card. Okay, they've been in the game once. And starters who are circled have re-entered the game. We'll talk about that as we go along. We'll have a practical exercise, and you can see how this works. Starters who are circled and slashed are history. That means they are not in the game anymore, and they can never come back into the game. You're done. Okay, substitutes who have been circled in the sub area, that's the area down at the bottom. If they've been circled down in here somewhere, then that means that they've been in the game once. Subs who are circled and slashed have re-entered the game. And subs who are circled in the substitution area are not presently in the game. Okay, this is the lineup card. We're gonna show you some practical exercises with this. And this is the lineup card that we're gonna use. Okay, and in this particular game, the coach wants to put number 8 in for number 6. So this is how, again, this is a system that I was taught. This is a system that I've used, and I know many, many other officials use the same system as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to the sub area, and we're going to get number 8, who is S or Pero. We put a circle around that 8 there. Now you can see on this particular slide, I've circled it in red. I actually do this during the game as well. I use red ink. It's easier to identify and see all the changes that you have made throughout the game if you use a different color ink than what the coach used to give you to make up his lineup. Okay, now you're going to put her in the substitution column. Okay, so she's going in for number 6. So you write her number, number 8, in the 5th slot where number 6 is at. Now you can tell from looking at your lineup card here, just looking at this particular case, that number 8 has been in the game already because she circled down at the bottom, and you can find the place who she went in for and the slot that she's in the substitution. So now the coach comes up to you and he calls time and he wants to make a sub. He's going to call for number 9 for 21. Okay, so we circle 9 down in the bottom. We find 21 in the starting player column, and we write her name or number next to that position there in that slot. The coach now wants to put number 2 in for number 8. Okay, so we go down, find number 2, we circle her, and then we write 2 next to where 8 is. Now, looking at this right here, you can see that you have 2 numbers in the substitution column in the same slot. You have 8 and 2. So remember, you can't have 2 players in the same slot at the same time. So what we do is we circle number 8, and that tells you that number 8 is no longer in the game. Any uncircled numbers in the substitution column tell you that they are actively in the game. Circled numbers in the substitution column means they've been removed. Now the coach wants to bring the starting player, number 6, back in. So this could be a starter or a sub. In this case, it is a sub, or rather a starter. I'm sorry, she is a starter. So what we do here is we circle number 6. Now you can do it one of several ways. You can either circle just her number, number 6, or you can circle just her name, or you can circle her number and her name. I like to circle the number and the name, and it stands out just a little bit more for me when I'm taking a look at it. So you remember that when somebody comes in, somebody has to go out. So the sub and the starter cannot be in the game at the same time. So now you're going to circle number 2, and that will remove her from the game.
And Rick, Shane Sowitz has his hand up. Shane, go ahead and put your hand down and unmute.
Hey, I apologize, but you gave some bad info early on. You said no starter can switch places at all. The one starter that can switch places is your flex, which in this case should be in the number 10 spot.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that when we get to the DP Flex section of this presentation.
I get that, but I'm just letting you know because you said they couldn't do it. Some of the newer umpires might be thinking that, so I just wanted to put it out there.
I just didn't want to throw too much information out there at one time. Right now, we're just trying to get to the lineup management on how to track your subs and bring them in and out of the game. So we'll talk about that when we get to the DP Flex and how they can switch and their roles. We'll be looking at that. And there's a different slide presentation for that one as well. But I thank you. I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, now let's see. Okay, so 21 is going to come in, is going to re-enter for number 7. Okay. So you find 21. 21 is there listed in the 8th slot. 7 is listed in the 2nd slot. They're both starters. So since she is a starter who is not circled, she can come back in. However, she can't come in for number 7. Reason being is that once she's in that slot, she's locked. They're locked into that slot. They can't be moved. What I was talking about earlier. So 21 has to re-enter the game in the same slot that she was in before, which was in the 8th slot. So you simply tell the coach, I can't do this. They're both starters, and she has to come back into her original spot where she was at. That's all you have to do is tell them that. Point out that it can't be done. Just do it very politely, very calmly, and then he'll make the decision on what to do. So in this case, the coach is going to correct his mistake and he says, oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry about that. Now I want to bring re-enter 21. I want to re-enter her. And that's usually the term that they're going to use, re-enter 21. So you go in, you find 21, you circle her. That tells you that she's come out of the game and she's now back into the game and it's used her re-entry right. Circle number 9 in the substitution column, that removes her from the game. So now number 5 is going to go in for number 6. We find 5, circle her down the bottom, and write her in for number 6. Okay. So that means that the starter has come out, and since she is circled, you know that she's now out of the game. She is history. She cannot come back into the game because she's now used her re-entry and she's going out. So how do we track that? We simply put a slash in through her name and her number. Just like that. If you see a circle and a slash, that means that player is done for the remainder of that game and cannot come back in. So now coach wants to re-enter number 9. Okay. Now number 9 has to be an uncircled or unslashed sub. So you go down to the bottom down here and you find that there's no slash, so she still has a re-entry left. She can come back in. She has to go back into the slot that she was originally put into, which is in the 8th slot. So what you do is you take her and you slash her down here. Again, just like it in the starting position, any number that's circled and slashed is history, and they're not coming back into the game. So now you're going to put her in the game, and she's back in the slot that she was in before. Okay, so since number 21's coming out, and she's already been re-entered once, slash her as well. Okay, now the coach wants to re-enter number 8, and he's going to put her in for number 9. The question to ask is this a legal substitution? Again, it's not. She hasn't. She's been in the game once. She hasn't reused she hasn't used her re-entry right. So you can slash her, but you find that number 9 is in the 8th slot. There must be a circled 8 in that same slot. There isn't. You'll find that a circled 8 is in the 5th slot. So again, it's not a legal sub, so you're just going to merely point out to the coach, sorry, coach, you can't go in that slot. She's already been in the game once. You can put her in for number 5 if you like, but that's the only spot that she can go into. So coach says you're right. Yeah, got it. So you put her back in, and then you circle 5 to take her out of the game. All right, quiz time. Okay, which starters are now history? If you say 8 and 9, you'd be wrong because they're subs. So the starters that are number 6 and number 21, they're history. They're slashed, and you know that because they're circled and slashed. Okay, which of the subs can re-enter? Okay, we can say number 2 and number 5 because they are circled, but they're not slashed. So you know that they still have a re-entry right left for them to come back into the game. Okay, so which subs are history as subs? Well, that's the 2 slashed ones that are circled and slashed. That's number 8 and number 9. All right, how'd you do? Hope you all did okay on that. I know I went through this kind of fast for the sake of time. Normally when I go through it with my group, this presentation and the next one will usually take at least 1 meeting, sometimes 2 meetings to go through it completely. And for the sake of time for our evening tonight, we went through it kind of fast. Any questions up to this point?
There was a question in the chat. Would you slash one of the 8 numbers?
Oh, in the substitution column? No, you don't need to slash them there because they're slashed down in the bottom. So if he wants to put a sub in, you go and check and make sure that that sub that he wants to put in is not slashed down in the bottom. You don't need to slash them up on the top. If they're circled, they're not in the game. If they are not circled, they are in the game currently. So if you want to know if a sub still has a re-entry right, just make sure that they're not slashed down in the bottom there. I hope that answers.
Courtney, did that answer your question? And then there's a
Yes,
comment.
sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, it did.
Thanks, Courtney. And then a couple of people said they like the different color idea. And then there was a comment also, eligible courtesy runners now are only number 23 and number 20.
That is correct. That is correct. Once a sub has gone into the game, by rule, by the courtesy runner rule, they cannot run as courtesy runners for either the pitcher or the catcher. Okay, so the only eligible courtesy runners that we would have in this particular case would be number 23 and number 20, since they have not been in the game, and you know that they haven't been in the game because they're not circled. I hope that answers the question. Okay, so what have we learned from this? Okay, we learned the importance and the purpose of the lineup card. We said that it helps you keep track of what's going on in the game. It prevents the illegal use of players, make sure that the use of players is legal, and it tracks everything that goes on. Now, if we go back, let me back that up a little bit. We go back to all this happened within the first, say, 4 innings of the game before the game got suspended. This is the card you would hand to your replacement if you cannot do the continued game days down the road. So you would have to give this to your replacement, and he would have to look at this, and he would be able to tell you who's eligible to come back in, who hasn't even been in the game yet, whose history, who cannot come back in at all, and he can tell all of this by looking at that. And that's one of the reasons that we want to make sure that we accurately track our substitutes and what's going on with them, courtesy runners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure that you are, if you're not going to use this particular system, make sure you have a system that works for you, that will accurately track what has happened throughout the game, so that you, if you have to hand this lineup card to somebody else, they can actually tell what's happened prior to the makeup game or the continuation game. Okay, we took a look at the lineup composition, the starters. We looked at the subs, and we saw how to use that. Took a look at the starter area, the sub area, and then we looked at the substitution area. Again, if you get a lineup card at your pregame and they've listed all the subs on that right-hand column, if you can work around that and squeeze your numbers, again, that's why I like to use different colored ink as well. If you can work around that, that's great. If not, just simply tell the coach, I haven't got room. If you make any changes throughout the game, can you please redo this, and just take the time. Have them take the time to redo the lineup so that you can work with it, because it really, really is important. And if you can't keep track of what's happening because of that, it can really come back to bite you if you have a dispute over who's batting or who's in the lineup, who isn't, who's been in, who hasn't been in. So you want to make sure that you have a clean copy to write in and make all your changes in as the game progresses. And then we talked about starters and substitutes. We looked at lineup entry and re-entry procedures, how to mark that lineup card. Again, questions? All right. Hopefully we'll get on the field this year. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm hoping, I know it's probably going to be a very short and abbreviated season, but short and abbreviated is better than no season at all. So hopefully we'll be able to get on the field for this year in this season. Okay, we're going to move on now. We're going to take a look at, let me pull the slides up here. We're going to be looking at the DP flex. This is an area that has caused a lot of confusion for a lot of umpires. Even many of those who are veteran officials have had some struggles with this. So we're going to take a look at this, and we'll go through this. We may go through this again. We might have to do this a kind of quickly for the sake of time, this particular presentation usually takes me a whole hour to get through with my umpires and my group, but we'll get through it, at least the basics of it, and hopefully you'll get a working knowledge of how this works for you during a game. Okay, so we're gonna define some terms. We're gonna look at the DP. We're gonna talk about the flex, who they are, what their roles are. Then we're gonna take a look at the rule. This is the rule here, 3-3-6. And then, like we did with lineup management, we're gonna do some practical application exercises. All right. DP, this caused a lot of confusion when it first came out. I wish they had changed that, because it does cause confusion. Many people think that DP, when they see that, they automatically think defensive player, and it isn't. This is an offensive player. It stands for designated player, and it is an offensive player that is in the game. The flex, however, is the defensive player for whom the DP is batting. So the DP bats for the flex. Now we'll take a look at a little more in depth at the DP. Again, as we said, it is an offensive position. The DP must play offense to be in the game. There is we'll talk about an exception to that. They have not left the game until she leaves the offense. Okay, so the DP can never play just defense. Okay, so they have to be, in order to be in the game and to be playing, they have to be on offense as well. Now looking at the flex. The flex, as we talked about earlier, is a defensive position. She must play defense in order to be in the game. Just as the DP has to play offense to be in the game, the flex must play defense to be in the game. And she has not left the game until she's left the defense. Okay, now the flex can never play just offense. Just as the DP can never play just defense, the flex can never play just offense. Okay, you can think of the DP flex as twin sisters. You can't have one without the other. They have some special privileges with some restrictions. The DP is the dominant twin. She was born first, and we'll talk about what that means later on. Now, one thing to remember, that the DP and the flex, if the coach wants to play a DP flex lineup, he's got to declare that at pregame. So in other words, when he hands you his lineup, there has to be a DP and a flex listed on that lineup card. If there is not a DP and there's not a DP and a flex combination listed on the lineup card, and you accept that lineup card as official, it's too late. He cannot switch during the game and say, hey, I want to put in a flex and a DP. It's too late. It has to be declared at pregame. All right, the DP has more privileges than her twin sister, the flex. And the flex, since she is the quote unquote weaker sister, she was born last. And so consequently, she has fewer privileges. Okay, if the twins are in the game, they must be in the starting lineup. And this is what I was saying before. If they haven't been declared at pregame, they will never be in the game. Okay, so if they're not in the starting lineup, they'll never come into the game. They can come into the game as subs. They can be in the game as as starters, and if it's a straight 9, but they can never come into the game as DP flex if they weren't declared at pregame. Okay, each twin lives in their own slot in the lineup card. The DP can go in any slot in the lineup card. And when I say any slot, I'm talking about any of the first 9 slots. First 9 slots. The flex, however, is always in the 10th slot. So if you get a lineup card and the coach hands it to you pregame, that DP can be anywhere in the first 9 slots. The flex will always be in the 10th slot. So when you're going through your lineup card and you're at pregame, you see a DP flex combination. If the DP is in any of the first 9 slots, that 10th slot, it will always be the flex. And so it's always a good idea, after you've check your lineup cards for numbers and positions and all of that. Ask the coach if that's exactly the way he wants his lineup card. And so that he knows. And I usually go through it and I tell the coaches, I'm reviewing the lineup card at pregame. I tell the coach, so you've got a DP in the 3rd slot and your flex is in the 10th. So that he knows, because I've had some where they made a mistake and they had the DP and the flex actually mixed up. And he said, oh, no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted that person I've got DP, that's supposed to be my flex. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. And so you hand it back. You haven't accepted it as official yet. Hand it back. They can make the correction and then they'll hand it back to you. Okay, each twin, they can leave their slot in the lineup and return to the, remember, same slot once. Okay, this is the re-entry rule. Same as any other starter, same as any other sub. Okay, each twin can play for her sister. So the DP can play defense for the flex, or the flex can play offense for the DP. But they cannot play for each other at the same time. All right, so they can't have them playing for each other. Can't have the flex playing for the DP and the DP playing for the flex, switching at the same time. If a twin plays for her sister, she forces her sister out of the game. So if the flex coach says, I want to drop my DP, and you're going to move that flex up into the DP slot to bat, okay, that's going to force that DP out of the game. Okay, the DP can play defense for any player in the lineup. It's not just for her flex sister. So if the flex is playing catcher, DP can play, she can go in and actually play defense for any player in the lineup. That player continues to bat. The player that the DP plays defense for will continue to bat, but does not play defense. Okay, she's what some say is the temporary DP or the offensive player, which is often referred to as the offensive player only. Again, I know I'm going through this fast, and some of this may be a little bit confusing, but the best way to get a handle on this is, number one, get into the rule, read the rule, make sure you understand the rule, and then come up with your own scenarios and practice. And if you have questions about it, bring it up to your group leader. Okay, so the offensive game, she's merely batting. That's all she's going to do. And she'll bat in her same slot. She's like a position player. She holds that position in the lineup. Okay, some of the lesser privileges of the flex twin is that she can play offense only for her DP twin sister. Okay, so she can't go in and bat for anybody else but the DP. She cannot bat for any other player. Okay, she can't bat for, if the DP's in the 4th slot, she can't bat for somebody in the 6th slot. Again, like we said, the DP cannot play just defense, and the flex cannot play just offense, but they can play defense at the same time. Remember what we talked about, the position player. DP can go in for anyone else on defense, and then that player will be offensive player only. The DP and the flex cannot play offense at the same time. Remember that the DP is batting for the flex. Therefore, the flex cannot be on offense with the DP. Okay, a substitute for the twin becomes that twin. I think this is what the question was earlier about the DP and the flex. Okay, so the sub has all the privileges of that twin. When the twins play for each other, there are only 9 in the game. Now you've dropped from 10 players, you've gone from 10 down to 9. And this can go on all game long, from 10 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 9, 9 to 10. But the coach, if he wants to do that and just go on and on and on and on for 7 innings, you better make sure that he has enough subs. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, on your lineup card, as you saw when we made changes for a starter, we would take that subs number and write it in the substitution column in that slot. So if 8 went in for number 2, you'd put 8 next to in that slot where number 2 was. In the case of the DP flex, we use an X, and we'll see how this works. Okay, so an X can only appear in the DP or the 10th slot of the lineup. Okay, so if you see an X in the DP slot, it means that the flex is now playing offense for the DP. And conversely, if you see an X in the flex slot, it means the DP is playing defense for the flex. Okay, here's our lineup card. It's same as last time. So now the coach wants the flex to bat for or assist the DP. So you put an X in that DP slot there. Now this tells you that the DP has come out of the game. The flex has now moved into that 4th slot and is batting for the DP. If you see an uncircled X in the changes column, the substitution column, that means that the Twins are now active, what we refer to as being active. So now we've gone from 10 players down to 9 because the DP has gone out of the game. She's come out of the game. So who's left the game? Number 10, Adams, who's in the DP, the 4th slot. Okay, now the coach wants to re-enter the DP. Remember, she's come out of the game, but she's not circled, so you know she has a re-entry right to come back in. So you circle her. Okay, so now you know that she's re-entered. But since you can't have 2 players in the same slot at the same time, you've got to get rid of flex out of that spot. So you circle the X just like you do with any other sub. Okay. Now the Twins are no longer active, so we've gone from 9 players back up to 10. Okay, let's take a look at what we've got so far. So who is the DP right now as it stands? The DP is number 10, Adams. Okay, how do we know that? Because we have a circled X in the changes column, and Adams has been circled. She's re-entered the game. She is the starter. So has number 19, Garcia, left the game? She has not left the game. Okay, she's back to playing defense only as the flex. How many are we playing with? Since you got a circled X up there, the Twins are no longer active, so we're back to 10 players. Okay, you guys are ready for some more changes. Here we go. Okay, we're going to use the same system that we've been using, and the X's will represent our Twins. So let's see how this works. Okay, coach wants to put number 8 in for number 10. Okay, you go down to your subs, you find number 8, circle her, and you're going to put her in for number 10. So you write 8 in that slot, 4 slot. Okay, so you ask yourself now, who has left the game? DP, number 10, Adams. Now remember what we said earlier, any subs that go in for that twin, for either of the twins, becomes that twin. So 8 is now your DP. How do we know that? She is uncircled in the changes. Okay, so which sub has entered the game? You know by looking, number 8. Okay, she's circled down in the subs area. Can she re-enter? Since she isn't slashed, yes, she can re-enter the game if she comes out. Okay, so the coach now wants the flex to run for the DP. So what do we do here? How do we mark that? Flex is going to run for the DP, so you're going to put an X up in that slot, in the DP slot. Okay, now you know that the Twins are active. Somebody's got to come out, since you can't have 2 players in the same slot. So you got to circle number 8 to remove her from that slot. So who just left the game? Well, by looking at your lineup card, you can tell that since you have a circled 8, that number 8 left the game. Can she come back in? Well, if she's not slashed down in the bottom, yes, she can. Which slot can she come back into? Like we said earlier, the only slot that she was in to begin with, which was the number 4 slot. So with active twins, an uncircled X there, how many are we playing with? If you said 10, you'd be wrong. We're playing with 9. All right, so the coach decides to put number 9 in as the DP. So you go down, you circle number 9. You put her in as the DP. So you write number 9 there. So you can't have, again, you cannot have 2 players in the same slot at the same time. So you're going to circle the X. Now here's where it gets kind of, this is where it gets kind of goofy here, where you have to kind of ask the coach to clarify if he's putting 9 in for the DP or if he's putting 9 in for the flex. Well, if he's putting 9 in for the flex, then actually you would put 9 down at the 10th slot, and then and if he wants to leave the flex in for the DP, leave the X uncircled. Okay? And no, that's confusing. It can get very confusing, but you got to ask the question: is she coming in for as a DP or as the flex? And if he says I'm putting her in as the DP, then circle the X. So who's left the game? Nobody. Nobody's left the game at this point because the flex, who was the DP, was running for the DP, now goes back to defense only, and she goes back to the 10th slot. So she never left the game. In this case, how many are we playing with? If you said 9, you'd be wrong. We're now back up to 10 players. So coach wants to put number 5 in for number 19. So you go down again, grab number 5 from the subs down at the bottom, circle her down there, and then write her in the flex slot. Okay, so who's left the game in this case? If you said number 4, or rather number 19, I'm sorry, number 19, Garcia, you'd be correct. How many are we playing with? If you said 10, you'd be absolutely right. Still playing with 10. Nobody's left the game except the flex, but we still have the flex in the game. We still have the flex position, and the twins are not active. So who's the flex? In this case, it's number 5, because that's who she went in for.
And Rick, Shane, you've got your hand up again. If you don't want to, if you don't mind unmuting and.
Yeah, Richard, when you bring your flex in for your DP and the coach wants to bring the DP back in, you can't assume that the flex is staying in. You got to ask the coach, what do you want to do with Garcia?
Exactly, because he may want to remove Garcia, and then and that's a good point. That is a good point. So I always ask when there's anything that goes on, any changes that are going on between the DP and the flex, I always ask the coach to make sure, because most of the time, be honest with you, and I think most of us that have been calling for a while know that coaches often don't understand this rule any better than anybody else, and they get confused with it as well. And mainly what you're going to find, this lineup card is a mess right now, and it's only going to get messier as we go along. But normally you won't see this many changes between the DP and the flex. The most you're going to see is a sub coming in for one or the other, but they'll still play with 10. Okay, they'll still play with DP and a flex. Because what most coaches want to do, and most coaches that I've talked to about the DP flex rule say they hate it. They hate it because it's confusing. And so they use it primarily as the old rule that we used to have way, way back before the DP flex came in, when we had the designated hitter, where one player was strictly batting and one player was playing strictly defense. And there wasn't any of the swapping back and forth. So that's mainly how they're going to use the DP flex. But some know this rule very, very well, and they use it very strategically. And so it's important that if there's at any time during the game, they make changes between the DP and the flex, ask the questions. Ask the questions. Are you keeping your flex in? Are you taking your flex out? Is the DP staying in? Is the DP staying out? When anytime they're making any kind of changes. Some really know how to use it, and they've used it well to their advantage. And you're right. Ask the question. Always ask the question of the coach, because it's important. Sometimes they don't know. They don't really know what they're doing. And they'll be very honest. I'm not trying to make fun of coaches or anything like that. That's not the point. The point is that the rule can be very, very confusing unless you've worked with it a while and you practiced with it. But it's equally confusing to coaches as well. Understand that. Understand that. And you don't want to allow them to make a mistake during the game that you'll have to correct later on, or even penalize them for having done something illegal during the game. So ask the questions. What do you want to do with your flex? What do you want to do with your DP? And make sure you get an answer from them. We should be, and I should have pointed this out when we were going through lineup management, but when they make a change, just a straight sub, like 4 for 5, and they're playing a straight 9, and they want to substitute number 4 for number 5, write it on your lineup card. Don't let them walk away until you've shown it to them. Say, is this what you want? Just to verify. And so if you're doing it with a straight 9, you really want to do it if you're playing with a DP flex. Thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. Okay, so the coach wants to put number 10 back into the game. That's Adams. You see up on the lineup, she's the DP. Okay, so you're going to re-enter her. You see that she can come back in. She doesn't have any circles or anything on around her number or name. So you circle her now, and that's going to tell you that she has used her re-entry. Okay, this is going to take number 9 out of the game. Okay, so you're going to circle 9, and that removes her. Again, ask the question, is this what you want? Okay, you're still playing with 10, right? Okay, so now looking at your lineup, can 9 come back into the game? We're going back to lineup management now. Say yes, she can come back in because she's not slashed down on the bottom. So who's the flex now? Number 5. If you said 5, you'd be absolutely correct. 5 is uncircled. Uncircled in the changes column. So now the coach wants number 5 to run for the DP. So the flex is going to run for the DP. What you're going to do is you're going to go up to the DP slot and put an X in that slot. Okay, so that's going to force Adams out of the game. Okay, she's coming out. So your twins are now active, and you've gone from 10 to 5. So Adams has to leave the game. She's history, so you're going to slash her. Draw a line right through her name and her number, and now you know by looking at that lineup card that she can no longer play in the game. She's done. She's finished. That's why I say when somebody goes in for the DP, if you move your flex into the DP slot, you're dropping down to 9 players. Okay, somebody's coming out of the game. It's not a free substitution. You got to remember that. If you go from 10 to 9 and back up to 10, they're not free substitutions, unlimited. You got to make sure that whoever's coming back in has re-entry rights. Okay, so Otero is now going to enter the game or re-enter the game. You find number 8. See, she's down there. You notice that she's circled, so she's using her re-entry. Okay, and she's going to go in the DP slot. Put her in that slot, and you're going to slash her down the bottom so that you know that she cannot come back in the game if she goes out. Once again, you want to make sure, okay, that the coach ask him, is this what you want? You want your flex to drop down or back down into the flex position? And if he says yes, then okay, you're good to go. So how many are we playing with in this case? Okay, we're going back to 10. You got a circled X up there. You can see how messy the lineup card's getting. I've yet to see one get this bad. Okay, so the flex is now going to run for the DP. Okay, so number 8, you can see that she's in that slot twice, and down in the bottom, she's slashed. So you're going to circle her, and the twins are now active, so you put an X in that slot. So now how many are we playing with? Said 9, you'd be correct. Okay, so who cannot come back into the game at this point? Well, look for all your slashed players and you'll see that you have number 10 Adams, and you have number 8 come back in. Now you're going to re-enter 19. Okay, she's in the flex. She's down at the bottom in the flex slot. She's not circled or slashed, so you know that she can come back in. Okay, so you circle her, and now you got to get rid of the person that's in that slot right now, which is number 5. So you're going to circle her. How many are we playing with now? If you said 9, you'd be correct. Still have an uncircled X up in the 4th slot. All right, coach comes out and says, hey, Blue, I want number 20 as my DP. Okay, so go down the bottom, you find number 20 in the sub area, you circle her, and you're going to put her in the changes. Now, here's where you got to ask the question, okay? Now 19 is going to go back to defense only. Make sure that's what he wants, okay? That he's not actually putting number 20 in as the flex, who's running, still running for the DP. So you need to ask the questions again. So circle the X. So now we got a circled X. So that's going to tell you that we are now playing with 10. Okay, so now the coach wants to move the DP to the flex position. Okay, now we're going the opposite way. We're going, before you can see that we've been moving the flex to the DP slot. Now we're going to go the opposite way. We're going to put the DP down in the flex spot. Can they do that? Absolutely. They can do that. So you're going to put an X in the 10th slot down there. All right, now your Twins are active again. But somebody's got to come out of that game, and it's just so happens it's the starter player, number 19, Garcia. So you're gonna have to take her out of the game, and you're gonna slash her.
I'm sorry, Richard.
Yes.
You're saying that you can take number 20 and move her to the flex spot?
She is the DP.
The DP cannot go into the flex spot. Only the flex can go up to the DP.
DP can go in and play defense and offense at the same time.
Understood. The DP can always play offense and defense, but you cannot take number 20, the DP, and move her down into the flex spot. That's not legal whatsoever.
I'm not sure about that. I'd have to read.
I'm 100% sure. I would put any bet on it.
Because I know I've seen games like that before in the past. But okay, well, we can discuss it. I'll look that up, and I will get a clarification and make sure that Dana gets that out to everybody as well.
Thank you.
Sure. So are your Twins active here? Yes or no? We're going to assume that we can do this. So the answer is yes, they are active. So we're now down to 9. So now the coach wants to re-enter number 5. Can he do that? Well, you go down and look at the bottom, you'll see that number 5 is not slashed. So yes, she can re-enter. But now you're going to slash her because she's used, you can see that because she's circled, that she's been in the game once, and now she's using her re-entry. So she has to go back in to the DP slot. Okay, so what happens to 20? She's got to go back to the DP slot. So you circle the X. Now your Twins are no longer active, so you're back up to 10. You're playing with 10 players now. All right, so what have we got so far? Which players cannot re-enter? Well, that's real easy, like we've been talking about all evening long. Anyone who's got a slash through their name and or number cannot come back into the game. So you're going to see that those players are number 10, 19, number 8, and number 5. So who's the DP? Go over to the DP slot and look for who's not circled in the changes slot. You'll find that that's number 20. So who is the flex? Flex is number 5. She's in that slot uncircled. So what subs are currently in the game? Number 5 and number 20. Okay, which of these 2 subs could re-enter if you took them out? The only one that is not slashed is number 20. Okay, so she still has her re-entry left. Okay, which slot can number 9 re-enter into? Okay, she can come in the 4th slot in the deep, which is the DP slot. You'll see that she's been up there once, not slashed down in the bottom, so she can come back in. So if put into the game, which slot could number 2 go into? She can go anywhere she wants. And you know that because she's not circled down at the bottom, which means she has not been in the game at all. So she can go in any of those 10 slots. All right, after that mess, that's ball game. Game's finally over. So I will look into that, Shane. I'll check. I'm pretty sure I've seen that before, but I'll look into it. And I'll make sure that Dana knows that.
What you basically did there, and I understand what you're trying to do, you removed the flex from the game. The DP never moved down to the 10 spot. The DP stayed in the 4th slot, but the flex left the game because the DP played defense for the flex. That's the difference. You went from 10 to 9, but you did it a different way. Instead of the flex moving up, you removed the flex.
Okay, like I said, I'll look into that and I'll make sure that everybody gets a correct ruling on that. But I understand that. But thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. All right. Any other questions up to this point? I know, like I said, we went through this rather quickly. We don't have time to do courtesy runner tonight, which is what I wanted to do, but I knew these two would take priority, really, because if you don't know how to manage your lineup card, you're going to be struggling through all your games. So again, like I said, these are the systems that I was taught. This is how I was taught to keep my lineup card straight so that I could keep track of the game. If it doesn't work for you and you've got another system, by all means use it. Just make sure that you can track everything that goes on in case there's a question that comes up during the game. Or like we said earlier, if you have a suspended game and you've got to pass that lineup card onto the person that's going to replace you behind the plate, that they can understand it, that they know, and they can track everything that occurred throughout the game. They can see who is actively in the game at the time. They can see who cannot come back into the game that have used all their re-entry right. And so you want to make sure that you have some system that works. This is the one I was taught. This is the one that works well for me, and it's not confusing at all once you practice. But practice, practice, practice. If you have to take a piece of paper and make up your own lineup card and come up with your own scenarios, that's the way you learn, and that's the way you get better at it. So I want to thank all of you for being on with us tonight. I hope I didn't confuse you too much. If you have questions, feel free to let me know, and we'll get an answer to you one way or the other. Dana, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Rick. We appreciate you taking the time to do this. We will have this, obviously this has been recorded, so we'll send everybody a copy of this recording. And if while you're looking at it, you have any questions, if you go back and take a look, just email those to me and I'll make sure that I get them to Rick for a response. We'll have, I think, 1 or 2 more of the off-season webinars prior to the actual meetings, the weekly meetings starting, and you all will get the emails about that. This was great attendance. This is the most we've had for any of our softball preseason webinars. So that's awesome. We appreciate everybody's time tonight and your willingness to be on with us. And Rick, your willingness to take your time to prepare and present for this evening. It was good stuff. It's probably the first time in all my years that I even kind of understand the DP flex, because when people call me, I usually glass over and transfer the call. So I think I'll probably still do that, but that was a really good presentation. So thank you. If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute and ask. Rick and Nate and I will stay on just a few minutes to field any questions that you may have. If you don't have any, you can go ahead and log off, or if you're just if you're DP flexed out, you can log off as well. So Rick, thanks again. Again, Nate and I will stay on with Rick for just a few minutes should you have any additional questions. Have a great evening, everybody.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Confusing, but great job was one of the comments.
Never confusing. Rick does a great job. He's a great group leader.
Yes, he is. I agree with you.
Thank you. Bye, Dana. Bye, Rick.
Bye. Take care, Mel.
We'll see you, Mel.
A lot of thank yous and good jobs here for you, Rick.
Thank you, Dana. I appreciate that.
Thank
Also,
you.
if you've got a chance, if I could just call you later on. I did have a question. It was about some issues that came up today, a question that came up today concerning some things that I guess that were discussed in the exec board. So
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to touch base with you on that and find out exactly what we're doing with that. So
Sounds good. Yeah. So if you want, can we talk tomorrow maybe?
sure. Yeah, that's fine. Tomorrow will
Yeah,
be
give
great.
me a call tomorrow. I have meetings that start at noon, so really anytime before there is good.
Okay, great.
You know, give me a holler. I think I know it with the athletic officials manual, and then I know
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
softball
Yeah.
jackets. I know is still a question, so just give me a holler tomorrow. And like I said, I've got my first meeting. Oh, I'm lying. I have one at 8:30, but that'll only be about an hour, so probably between 9:30 and noon is good.
Okay, I'll give you a call then.
Awesome. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Hey, Rick, can you put your email in the,
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you right now.
okay, because I want to send you the NFHS Simplified where it shows it on number 7.
Yeah, you know what? I'm looking at it right now. I've got it on my tablet and I'm looking at that. I'll send you my email anyway.
Thank you.
Is it bad that I know it's eagle.1@att.net?
That's it. Yeah, you got that memorized, huh? Yeah, did you get that, Shane?
Eagle.1 at
Yeah,
att.net.
At att.net, correct.
Okay.
I must
Yeah.
email you a lot, Rick. Or I just really need to get a life. I don't know. When I'm memorizing officials' emails, there's something wrong with me.
Just to make sure, EAGLE.1 at att.net.
Correct.
Okay.
I agree with this. Somebody in the chat said, great job. DP Flex is still the most confusing rule in sports, but you did a good job clearing it up some way.
Well, I had heard there was maybe a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, that there was talk of removing it and going back to the simple DH rule like we used to have because it was so confusing. And I guess apparently there were a lot of coaches that I understand had just told NFHS that this is really confusing. We don't understand it. We don't know how it works. And so, yeah.
And we're doing actually on the 22nd of this month, 2 of our baseball umpires are doing a DH presentation because that was so confusing during the state clinic that it was like, all right, we need to dedicate a full hour just to this. So we're doing, apparently DH and DP Flex are 2 of the most confusing things. For some reason, the bat and ball sports have these weird rules that nobody knows how to use.
Yeah. And to me, when I first started, we didn't have DP Flex. And when it came in, it took me a while to get a handle on it and even get anywhere close to it.
Once you understand that it's so simple.
Yeah, it gets simple after that. But a lot of times, if you like you were saying, Shane, earlier, if you're not asking the coach the question on what you want to do with this flex or what you want to do with this DP, it can really lead to some mass confusion, 2-3 innings down the road
Very true.
that you didn't bargain for. So yeah,
It probably, to me, it sounds like something that unless you umpire, you actually have to do it. It's probably very hard to understand. I mean, looking at it, I can make sense of it somewhat, but I think it would be something that I'd have to actually apply it to be able to really explain it, because it's tough.
Yeah, it takes practice.
Oh, I would imagine.
Yeah.
A great way, Dana, to understand is I do high-level travel ball all the time. I'm going to Arizona again this weekend for a 4-day tournament. You have to literally explain to the coaches half the time what they're doing. And the one other thing we didn't talk about is coach hands you that lineup. He's got the DP flex. You hand it back, coach, that the way you want it? Yes. Okay. Other coach, yes. And now official. Coaches, any changes at this time? Yes. I would like to drop my flex.
That happens a lot.
Because the flex is a pitcher who cannot hit usually. And the DP, 90% of the time, is the best hitting pitcher who's not necessarily the best pitcher. And that's what they'll do quite often.
Yeah.
The other really good way to handle it is just to give those phone calls to someone else when they come to my office. I mean, that's how I handle it. That's why I have experts in all sports, so I could go, I have no idea.
My instructional chair for inland put something up one day, and I asked him just the same way, hey, Vince, are you sure that's right? He said, yes. I go, are you willing to put dinner on it? He said, yes. I said, okay, bet. And he still hasn't paid me my dinner, though. He lost it.
Hey, Shane, I like your cross wall back there.
Oh, yeah, I live with my sister. She's got a great setup in this house. Very Western. The crosses are all metal crosses that have been made and done and traded for. So it's me.
Yeah, very nice.
Super cool, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick.
Yo.
And
It's
they're all-
Willie.
Hey, Willie.
Hey, you did say that you wasn't able to cover the flex running for the DP.
I'm sorry.
You didn't cover that, right?
I didn't hear your question, Willie. You
Can
broke
the
up.
flex run for the DP?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they can, but it's a substitution.
For the DP.
Yeah.
DP's out of the game at that point.
Well, only one time, yeah. They can come back in.
Until the coach re-enters the DP,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
flex stays in that spot until that point.
That's right.
Anyways, everybody have a good one. Richard, I'm sorry.
You too.
Hey. No problem, Shane.
This is my sport. I do almost every sport, but I'm inside out on this. Two of my biggest mentors have been Chris Strum and Joanne Vendito. Joanne Vendito is now the head of officials for Pac-12 and assigning. And then, of course, Chris Strum, if you've been around, you know, and they would kill me if I didn't state what I had to state.
Oh, no problem. But you said basketball?
No. I do basketball, football, volleyball, baseball, softball. I've done kickball.
I'm just curious. What shape is a basketball? I don't know. I'm not familiar with that sport.
It's usually round, but every once in a while it's a little oblong and a little flat.
I thought that was in football with the New England Patriots, but we won't go there.
It's always oblong and extra flat.
Yeah.
You just couldn't resist, could you, Rick? I believe we're going to sign off, everybody. Thanks for joining us, Rick. Thanks again for the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you all.
We will
Thank you,
chat
Rick.
soon. Thanks, everybody.